Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with Louis D'Souza. Today is Monday, August the 19th. It is 8 a.m. in New York. That's 5 a.m. Los Angeles time, 1 p.m. in London, 9 p.m. in Tokyo, 10 p.m. in Sydney. Wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And I'm happy that our week is off to a start with another set of episodes of LOA Today. Although I do have to let people know, I started letting people know on Friday that Louise and I are going to be away starting this Friday because we're going to a memorial service for my mom who passed at the end of July around the same time Louise' father did. And so we will be gone that Friday and the following Monday and Tuesday, but we will be back the following Wednesday. So unfortunately, Louis, I won't be able to talk to you next week, but I'll be looking forward to talking to you in 2 weeks. And plus, I get to talk with you today. So that's all the good news.
Yeah, that's great. Good morning, everybody. How's it?
Good morning. Yeah. So things are well. And I think we're going to start off with a couple stories because you showed me that you had a story to tell. And it sounds like there's actually more than one story associated with this. So, go ahead and tell some stories.
Well, you know that I'm always fine, yeah?
Absolutely, yes.
So this week I wasn't fine. So I went and bashed my finger in the door.
Ouch. Yeah.
I really banged that hard, and then I had so much pain in a joint, the second toe, which with Jinshin Jitsu, which I've talked about, that healing art, which I'm involved with, and Astrid was also talking about. Mm-hmm. There's your eye-toe, your second toe from your big toe is your eye-toe.
Okay.
But it wasn't the first. You get the first bone on that toe, and then you get the second bone on the toe. So where the second bone and the third bone join, I was in such extreme pain that I couldn't walk in it. It was incredible. And it's amazing how much that affects your life, Suddenly you can't.
No kidding.
Like,
yeah.
So I eventually hobbled along to a doctor to get it x-rayed because I thought maybe I'd broken it because I've had an old wound there, I think, on that toe, but I know one of my toes has always given me a bit of aches and pains. So I didn't really know what this was about, and I went there and I thought, let's see if it's broken or there's a fracture or, something, or arthritis or whatever, or
sure,
I don't know, let's go get them. So they x-rayed it, nurse had a look at it and all the rest of it, and there's absolutely nothing, but they can see no swelling, nice. no breaks, no tears, no nothing. So you've got these weird things happening to you that come out of the absolute blue, and they are so painful they can completely debilitate you. Mm-hmm. Not only that, you smash your finger in the door.
Yeah.
Trip over things.
Piece of advice: don't do that anymore.
Really, when that happened to me, I was like, I haven't felt that much pain for a long time. And when I had my foot, it was even more than that, and I haven't felt so much pain, and you start really appreciating other people who are suffering from pain,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So incredibly painful. So I did some Jinshin on myself, spent most of a night doing it, and I gave up anything to do with straining my eyes completely. So, no mobile phone time, and, just giving myself a complete relax. Palming the eyes, which I don't know if I've ever showed you before, but it's the one thing that helped me improve my eyesight massively.
Really?
Just put your hands over your eyes like that, which is called palming your eyes. It's in the Bates method, which is a famous method of improving your eyesight, which is probably the thing that works best out of the entire Bates method in my my estimate. And the next day I was 50% better, and by the evening I was walking on it fine again. Still a little bit of pain, and today, the third day, it's completely gone.
Fabulous.
100% gone. And, I just don't understand what it was in the first place, except I probably was straining my eyes a bit too much with screen time, as they call it.
Oh, it's easy to do. I mean,
It is.
Especially these days, considering how much screen time we all get.
Yeah. So it's interesting how it manifested in my eye toe, and that eye toe of mine was actually skew. It was curved to the right and curved down. So it was out of sync with all my other toes.
Yeah.
Which is also another sign that there is strain in the muscles in that area, which is pulling it out of alignment. So, of course, doing Jinshin, getting the energy flowing down to your feet again, which is what I was doing a lot. Actually, before this happened, I started getting athlete's foot again, which is something I haven't had for ages, and all the rest of it. So that's another sign that I get where there's not enough energy going down to the feet. So this is kind of like all an accumulation in my mind of the blockage of energy going down to the feet area. So, I'm just really glad I know all this stuff and I know what to do, because the only reason I went to the doctors is because I've always had in the back of my mind, is this a broken bone or something like that? Because I can't see into my own foot, and having them actually x-ray it and give me the physical x-ray and looking at it, and my foot is 100% perfect. There's no cuts, scratches, breaks, tears, nothing in any of my bones. And they also say there's a professional that goes over the x-ray a day or two later, just to check that the nurse and the doctors don't miss anything. And if they do pop up with something, they come back to you. So there's also that aspect, which, nobody's come back to me, but this will probably give them a few days. But I wanted that peace of mind that when I go to doctors, I don't necessarily want to take in the advice of what to do about anything. But I want the knowledge of what they can give me that I can't give myself, like x-raying my own foot. I can't do that. So I always find that incredibly useful for doctors to give me the information, but then I will decide what I want to do with it. And it's just really amazing how quickly I was really visualizing in my mind, which I shouldn't have been, of course, that this may take a long time to heal. And then all I did is I went into step 3, just relief and release, just let go of everything. Stop pressurizing my eye, because I know it was linked to that. It's interesting in Jinshin Jitsu, I don't know if I'm pretty sure I haven't told you this, Walt, but they say the purest energy of all the organs goes into your eyes. So what it's doing is the purest. I mean, if you understand the eye, your input stimuli, I think something like 80 or 90% is your vision, and then the rest all make up the other 10%, like your hearing, your feeling, etc. So they say in Jinshin Jitsu, in the energy world, that they're taking the purest part of those energy and putting it into your eyes. So you can understand why people who lose their eyesight have got quite acute hearing or other senses, because you've now got a huge percentage they can now integrate into the other senses. And so, when you've got this knowledge and you use it and you put it into effect, and you see how quickly things can change in your body without taking any medication. The nurse said to me, do you want any painkillers? I said, I don't really do painkillers. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, guys, if anybody's still hearing this, Walt seemed to have vanished. I went away for a second and he vanished. Hi, Walt, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes.
Well, that was an interesting little thing. I've been doing an experiment, and the experiment produced a drastic result.
Not the right time to do experimentation.
Well, I wasn't actually doing anything in the experiment. The experiment was just to try to run this during the show, but nope, it just didn't work at all. I installed a VPN to provide general security around here, and all of a sudden, in the midst of the show, it decided to provide extra security. It blocked everything. I couldn't have any access to the internet.
Right. It was weird, because I'd just gone away, and then you vanished. It's like,
yeah. Well, that was quite.
Walt was getting upset with me.
No. So I have an issue now to report to the VPN company, to say the least. So anyway, we kind of cut off your story there. You were
Yeah. It's
doing Jinshin Jitsu on the toe, and you had some good results, and then it kind of disappeared after that.
yeah. So it just really surprised me again, like Jinshin Jitsu usually does, how it puts you into step 3 and just everything just vanishes.
Yeah.
And I love it. So athlete's foot has gone already. My toe is better, 100% better. Literally today I was actually banging it because I just couldn't believe it. You know how when you've had a pain in one area and you get better and you don't really want to test it? You're very, but no, today I was actually banging it because I was like, yeah, let's just see, just very gently first and then going harder. But it's like, I'm so excited. It's all fixed. It's
sort of like the VPN isn't. But.
Yeah. Well, something's going to go wrong before it gets fixed.
Well, the thing is, we know that in order to grow, in order to have expansion, you have to first identify what you don't like and then change it to what you do like. And I have definitely identified what I don't like. So
So that brings me to another point. Well, we had some Chinese students that I was chatting to the other day, and they were 14 and 15-year-old girls. And it was fascinating because they really took on board the whole LOA thing. Of course, I was talking to them about law of attraction,
right,
and life and your emotional guidance and everything. And they were very skeptical in the beginning, and I was encouraging them to be skeptical and to ask as many questions as possible. And so I said to them, throw any scenario at me so that we can work through it. So they said, what's this thing about America and Chinese stopping trade? You know, it's hurting both countries, they say to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to them, that's a great question. So what do you understand from my teaching about that? And you got the silence, so I prompted them. I said, remember I said when you know what you don't want, you have a better idea what you do want. So you're kind of giving me the impression you don't want this embargo between the two countries. And they said, yes. I said, does it feel good or does it feel bad? They said, no, it feels bad. So I said, what is your higher self telling you if it's giving you negative emotion? It's saying to you that your thinking about the subject is wrong. Okay, because nothing ever goes wrong, but you have expansion. I said, now that this embargo is there, wouldn't it be better? And I don't even know if it exists, Walt, because I don't look at the news. I just presume it's correct.
That hasn't gone anywhere real quick.
Is that actually what happened? You probably know.
Well, but let's just say that the trade war is producing the results that the girls were talking about, and people on both sides are trying to decide whether they did dislike it enough to change their mind about something.
That's exactly what I was pointing to. I was saying, now that China knows what it's like not to trade with America, and America knows what it's like not to trade with China, do you not think they're going to come up with better ideas of what they should do in the future? And if you focus on that, wouldn't that be a great idea? And, they were already getting it. They were like saying, oh, okay, so we must focus on what we want. But then they said to me, but, I'm just one little girl in China. What does that matter? I said, one person who's in alignment is more powerful than millions that aren't. And they actually really got that.
Well, that would be very consistent with Buddhist teaching, and they'd be very familiar with Buddhist teaching. So that makes sense.
Well, I asked them about religion, and they said they have absolutely no religion whatsoever. And
okay.
And their parents haven't had any, and nobody around them has got any, and the school doesn't seem to have any.
All right.
But again, they could be missing something. There could be a religion.
Well, I think that Buddhism is often treated as if it's not a religion, actually. I think the West treats it as a religion more than the East does.
No, but there was no mention of Buddhism in any shape or form. Specifically, I dug into that aspect because I was quite curious.
Sure.
They seem to be very free and liberated and very open-minded, which I was very impressed with and I enjoyed. Obviously it's individuals, specific individuals, not necessarily an entire country, and you can't judge an entire country. So I was just really, really enjoying speaking to them, and they were starting to really get this whole idea that when you know what you don't want, you have a better idea what you do want. So I started to bring up health to them, and I said, okay, give me some name of some diseases. and ailments and negative emotions and all the rest of it. And they started coming up with lists and lists. And then I said to them, okay, how many are there? So they said, well, millions. We can't even count them all. I said, right, now I want you to start thinking about how many positive, healthy versions of these negative things that you can think about. And they literally didn't come up with one. They say the word happy or healthy. So, the whole concept of focusing on the other side to them was so alien. And they started to really grasp that full concept that, my gosh, there's so many negative, so many ailments, so many
Good
things.
for them.
And it was really an eye-opener, and they were grasping that, and they were like so surprised they'd never thought about it before, etc. So it was really an interesting experience, watching their minds twirl.
Right.
And the one girl said, this whole philosophy thing makes me tired.
Well, I understand what she means. It makes me tired, especially when I'm working it. If it's early days and I'm trying to just learn how to apply something and I'm really putting my attention on it, I'm lucky if I can last 5 minutes. It takes a lot of effort at first. And then as you get the momentum switched around the right direction, then it becomes much, much easier. But
I think I've been very fortunate with that because, I started at the age of 8 consciously really seeking. So to me, that is a bit of a foreign idea on this concept. If you were teaching a microbiologist or something, I'd be feeling tired.
Yes.
But on this subject, I've got so much momentum going on it. It's really, really easy for me. It was interesting because that's what it's often like when you're putting out new ideas for people. It's much easier for them to say, as somebody said to me on Facebook not so long ago, Louis, you're just talking rubbish about this one subject. I was saying willpower is nothing but a thought you think often.
Mm-hmm.
And they were saying, Louis, you're talking absolutely rubbish.
Really? Now that's interesting.
Yeah, it was fascinating because
that's not even directly a law of attraction concept. That's just sort of general psychology.
Well, it's basic common sense, really.
Well, that too.
Yeah,
something that there's not so common an amount of, but.
But the interesting thing was, I saw a day or two later, he put there, oh yes, it could be thoughts that you think often. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. Because I didn't respond to it at all, positively or negatively. I just
right.
You can have your opinion, and I'm quite happy to deal with it.
I actually pissed somebody off. I think it was on Facebook because they commented something along the lines of law of attraction is a bunch of, I'll substitute the word rubbish for what they said. And that's why it doesn't work. And I responded to them, well, then for you, that's exactly what the experience is going to be. And they didn't like that one at all.
Do you know the very frustrating thing for anybody who's trying to argue against the universal law of attraction is they get slapped around quite heavily because if you really want to prove that Christianity is real, the universal law of attraction will help you find more
Sure.
evidence. It's real.
Absolutely.
If you want Buddhism to be real, it's going to find more evidence. If you want the earth to be flat, you're going to find more evidence that the earth is flat.
That's right. Yeah, there's really no limit to that.
And that is really annoying for people.
It's annoying for me early on, especially trying to make heads or tails out of this stuff because, we are conditioned not to believe that belief drives everything. And so now trying to adopt the viewpoint that belief drives everything is mind-boggling because I don't think we even realize at first just how many areas of life our belief in objective behavior really is. Objective thought, objective everything is pervasive. It's the basis for most of modern society. And so to suggest that objective thought isn't of itself a belief system is, that's enough to send some people into a coma.
Objective belief system. That's something I want to play with for a little while.
Because it is. They're all belief systems.
Well, if you back that up a bit, belief is a thought you think often. So everything is a thought you think often. Your whole life is created. Your whole world. They really struggled with that one. The Chinese were really struggling, and I mean 14, 15-year-olds who've never thought about the concept, I can understand why anybody struggles with it, that you create your own reality and you only bump into other people. You create your own world, and other people only bump into it for very short periods of time usually. Mm-hmm. When I said to them, I don't really even understand my wife that well. I don't. She lives a complete world that I can't ever live in because I don't have a huge amount of experience. I haven't lived them. I haven't reacted to them in the way she has. I don't have it. I will never have it. I won't. I can maybe know her better than others.
Sure.
But
quite a bit better, I would say.
Yeah, but it's, the way I understand other people, which is interesting now, is by understanding myself, by understanding how the universe works, how I work. Then I can say I understand wealth quite well. Mm-hmm. Because I understand what you're probably going to do next, because I understand how the universe works, not because I understand you necessarily. And that's where kind of there's that twist. And I've had many a person say to me, how did you know that about me? How did you understand that? Where did you get that from? And I said, it's the way life works. So I can see the process going down the line and.
And by the way, that's a great thing, because in the absence of what I might call a true objectivity, independent of belief, it's helpful to have those kinds of parallels where we can identify with the same thing. You and I do a show every week about the law of attraction because we're very much on the same wavelength. Does that mean that we know everything about each other? Absolutely not. Not even close. But we still have that connection. That connection provides a sense of stability. It provides a sense of continuity. It feels secure. It feels safe. It feels powerful. It feels exciting. I mean, it's a very, very powerful thing. So the communication may not give us a complete idea of everything about that other person, but it gives us enough that we can communicate, that we can relate, we can interact with each other, we can do stuff. And that's really what we need anyway.
And that's the amazing aspect, isn't it, Walt, that we have created a universe, and you've created your universe, and we've created it with so many similarities that we can communicate.
Yeah.
We often create the scenarios in a lot of our movies. The alien comes here and we don't know how to communicate with them. And there's this whole thing about learning how to relate and communicate. I'm watching a TV series at the moment about that. And the guy starts throwing sound at it, and he plays Mozart, and eventually this thing starts playing Mozart back to them. And then he realizes that all they do is play music back to them. And he's like, okay, so now we've got a good parrot. What's next?
What's next, right?
And then they realize that in the silences, they put a whole lot of information, but now they don't know how to decode the information. But, it's really interesting when humans when species don't have a similar language or whatever to communicate in. Even if the Chinese girls didn't speak fairly good English, I would never have been able to have this conversation. It just wouldn't be possible, and it's people on the same planet.
Right. I mean, when you're describing that, it reminds me of a very old movie based on a novel by Carl Sagan, the scientist, called Contact. And in that movie, they receive contact via radio waves from outer space and realize that there is an actual pattern to it. It's a life-generated pattern. And when they dig deeper, what they find is that it's a series of prime numbers, all the prime numbers up to infinity. When they figured that part out, then they realize, okay, now we have a common language. Now what do we do with this? And they find there's more stuff underneath that, and then they develop the ability to understand the message that this other species is sending to them. So it sounds very similar.
Yeah, it is. And, we've got a whole planet with billions of people who we're able to relate to, which we have created. We've created the stable, the stability aspects like planet Earth, gravity, air, water, etc., which are all commonalities amongst all of us. And then we've created them, as far as Abraham says, we've created them all with our thought.
Right.
So we've got this whole structure already, which is very much in harmony. I mean, just think how many things could go wrong with the planet spinning, with the sun, with the water, with anything, It's just there's so many things that could go wrong. There's so many things going right.
Well, that's what we need to spend more time on.
Yeah. So many things going right that it's unbelievable that we actually exist on this planet. It is mind-blowing. And, you start having a keen appreciation for all this, and you just have so much respect,
It's funny, too, because as you're describing this, I'm remembering, I think it was actually a podcast conversation, but it was a conversation I had with one of my co-hosts, I don't remember which one, about superlatives. Mm-hmm. And when you look closely at the superlatives, even the superlatives are based in large part in what we don't want. So something that is terrific is something that is rooted in the same root as terrifying. Uh-huh. So, what was the one you used? I can't remember what you used just a moment ago, but it has a similar kind of root. And there's actually a very, very small, I know, it was unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Yes. So it can't be believed. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, it can be believed. And it's a very, very small subset of superlatives that actually describe what we prefer rather than what we don't prefer, which is really an interesting thing. But it kind of illustrates the idea we need to spend more time on it. We need to spend more time on what we prefer, on feeling what we feel, on that in a way that does not negate, and expressing ourselves in a way that does not focus on the part that we don't want. I mean, there's a real exercise that we have to go through here, and that's part of becoming a deliberate creator.
Yeah. It reminds me of the naughty game we used to play with the girls at school when we were young. We used to say, "You're pretty." And the girl would and you said, "Pretty awful."
Oh, right.
You're a star. You're a disaster.
Oh, that star. Oh, okay.
And, if we really got it, what all these things are telling us is that our teacher in life is contrast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so simple. It's so in your face. It's so basic part of your life that unless somebody actually points it out to you, you often don't see it. You just don't see it.
Well, that's why Abraham had to point it out to us, and these other teachers. They had to point it out to us because we just couldn't see literally could not see the forest from the tree.
Exactly. It's so close. Yeah. It's so in us. It's so part of us that you just can't see it unless somebody says, "Oh."
Yes.
I was trying to explain to them. They were saying, "Oh, this teacher's great, and this one does this, and this one does that." And I said, "That's great, but do you understand who the real teacher is?
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand that your teacher is just putting contrast in front of you so that you can see?"
And now a lot of people, including people who are exploring law of attraction, there are some people who not only don't understand that, they don't want to understand it.
No, but they want to give their power over to somebody else.
But they don't at the same time, which is really interesting. I mean, I had a conversation with one person who, she posted something about, what was it about? I can't remember what the topic was. But anyway, she had made her whole post about this other person and all the things that the other person was doing wrong, and how this is part of a series of events where the other person is always doing something wrong. It's always other people who are doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. So I pointed out to her, maybe you ought to look within, instead of looking without look within. And she says, "Oh, how blaming that is. How could you possibly be so mean-spirited to blame somebody like that?" Whoa. Okay. So if I suggest you look inside, I'm blaming you. That's an interesting thing.
Well, that's just what they were doing to the other person. It's like, oh, that's what you were just doing, isn't that?
Yeah, I didn't really want to piss her off that much. But it was one of those things that when it happened, it's like, whoa, it just really kind of reinforces how different people's perspectives are. And that particular case, my perspective and hers were way, way different. Really, really different to the point where I realized I didn't have a clue what was going on inside her head. I mean, I did have some clues, but I didn't dare draw any conclusions from them because my conclusions to that point had been really off base, including the idea that she actually wanted to get better. But, yeah. The perspective is everything. And I like what you were saying earlier about how, we, like you said, you used the example of your wife. You know your wife better than anyone, but you really don't know her. There's so much about her you don't know because you don't share that experience with her. And what I wanted to say was, well, I didn't want to interrupt you, so I didn't say it. But what I wanted to say was, wow, that really demonstrates wisdom in my view.
Sorry?
It demonstrates wisdom.
Wisdom. Okay.
Because it is a recognition of just how much you don't know and don't understand. And in adopting that viewpoint of, wow, there's really a whole bunch here I don't understand that I don't know, what you're really saying is, I'm in a good enough place where I can be okay with that.
And not only that, I've got more to explore.
And I got a lot more to explore. Absolutely. Yeah. Instead of, oh God, I just don't understand this stuff. It could have been, you could have gone that way if you really wanted to.
Or the other way, Walt. The other way is, I know everything about you. And
I know everything. Yes. I know you better than you know yourself.
Yeah.
I had a woman say that to me one time back in my dating years, and immediately in the back of my head was, like, yeah, how quickly can I get out of this?
I had two of my very first relationships. Both the ladies said to me, nobody will ever love you as much as I do.
Ooh. Oh, my. Whoa.
And that really got my back hairs up. I don't know why. I don't know how. I wasn't even thinking about that. They were wrong. They shouldn't say that. It just, really got my goat. And probably if I think about it now, I'll be able to break it down and realize why. But, I felt a negative emotion immediately when they said that to me. I was like,
well, I mean, I don't think that takes a whole lot of analyzing, to be honest.
Well, to tell you the truth, I've only thought of it to that degree. Now, looking at it for a little bit, I would say, how dare they say somebody else will love me?
Well, even more than that, to me, it says, I mean, it's like they've admitted right up front with one sentence, I'm planning to micromanage you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's probably what I was feeling too, yeah.
I'm sure, yeah. I mean, you may not have consciously thought it, but, the inside part of you was saying, no, I don't really want that much.
That's exactly what I was doing. I was very clear about that. I wasn't sure exactly why, but
this is where you learn to practice, maintaining your control and saying, no, thank you. No, thank you. Wow. Boy, yeah, that would be a tough one to deal with. I mean, you deal with it. You dealt with it. Obviously, it didn't affect you very much because it didn't stay.
No, I didn't stay very long with either of them. It was really interesting, though. It was so profoundly stark within me, the negative emotion kicking in and me listening to it, not really needing to understand it fully or psychoanalyze it, but just running with it and moved on, It was just interesting.
I just realized I had an experience somewhat similar to that. I met a woman through this was before modern online dating. It was back in the age of like newspaper ads, that kind of thing. And I met this woman through an ad. This was our first time meeting. We met in a public, I think it was a bar, but we met in a place. And as soon as we were within 2 feet of each other, you could tell it just was wrong. It was not going to work. And her first, I don't remember the conversation exactly, but the gist of her initial conversation was to ask me a question that it was a really strange question, and it had to do with what I did for a living. And when I gave my answer, her response was something along the lines of how I had deceived her into thinking that I was incredibly wealthy, which I would never have done that, not under any possible scenario. And what I finally realized is she was looking for a sugar daddy. She was looking for somebody who would just take care of her financially for the rest of her life. She didn't care about the relationship part.
Yeah.
And all that went through my head in about 5 seconds. And from that point on, it was, once again, how quickly can I politely leave? I want to get out of here as fast as possible. And I think we both were on that same thought, because that conversation ended in about 5 seconds. It was really done.
I would have played with it a bit, Walt. I would have said,
well, I wasn't into LOA at that point, so I didn't have enough knowledge to do that. But tell me what you would have done. I'm curious.
I would have said, wealth comes in many forms.
Never miss an opportunity to mess with the head. Yeah, I get it. Okay. That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, I'm so excited, Walt. You have no idea how excited I am. And
About what?
it's something I'm guessing a lot of people on the planet get excited about, but it's a bit cheesy, but I'm getting a new phone on Friday.
Hey, that's cool.
It's a bleeding edge phone. It's the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 Plus.
Ah.
So it will be the most powerful phone on the planet for a couple of weeks.
I love the way you said that. That was great.
And I will enjoy those few weeks. But, I'm really milking the excitement of this.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's a phone or what it is, but
No.
hey, if it floats your boat, milk it,
Absolutely.
I'm sitting there just drooling over some of the YouTube videos of what it can do and all these fancy things. And it's got 4 cameras, 3 at the back and 1 in the front. So it's got 4 cameras. You've got a wide angle. You've got the zoom. You've got the one that does the whole depth perception thing. So you can actually draw, with the pen, with the S Pen, you can draw in the air on your picture when you're starting to film, and then you can actually walk around this image that's being created.
Ah, okay.
So it's not called virtual reality. It's called something else. I don't remember now. So, that you'll play with once and throw it away. You'll never use it again, I know, but.
But it'll be fun for the first 2 weeks.
That'll be cool.
And actually what you've touched on here is a very important adjunct to what we talked about a few minutes ago, because we talked about how we are so heavily trained, inundated with teaching, indoctrinated to focus on what we don't like. And when it's a major pattern. What you're describing here is how you get out of that pattern.
Mm.
You get out of that pattern by getting into the pattern of getting really excited about what you like.
Mm-hmm.
And in so doing, you kind of chip away at that old pattern. It doesn't necessarily go away instantly, but the more that you keep playing with, I really love this new phone that's coming, or I love this new thing that's happening, or I love this experience that's about to happen. You get more and more into that. All of a sudden, not all of a sudden, over time, your mind starts to shift. It starts to shift the way you look at things, and you spend a lot less time on all the things that you don't like. You spend a lot more time on the things that you do like, just because you're establishing that pattern. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah. It proves itself again and again. You're focused on something you don't want. More than 14 seconds, it becomes bigger. And one of the big things I was discussing to the Chinese girls is, I say, when your friend is sad and down, what do? So, it was quite interesting. What happened? Oh yes, my finger, which I bumped. So I showed them my finger. I said, I've just really hurt myself. And she said, oh, I'm so sorry. And I stopped and I said, wow, we need to talk about something. I said, what? I said, if you want to help your friend who's sad, do you come down to their level?
Mm.
Or do you stay high? I said, oh no, you gotta be with them. You gotta. I said, no. I said, what you just did to me just now, by coming down to my pain level of my finger and all the rest of it, felt so horrible I wanted to run away. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I was really feeling uncomfortable. And so, these girls are very sharp, very, very sharp. So a day or two later, I said to them, I haven't told you this before, but my dad died. And she just looked at me, didn't know how to react, and just she realized that she mustn't come down and say, oh, I'm so sorry. So she remembered it and then started to implement it, but wasn't sure how to do it in a positive way.
It's a great example. It's a great example. I don't know what method you've taken. The approach that I take with that is, somebody gives me the bad news, is I'll say the words with no feeling behind them, and then I'll follow it up with something more positive.
Yes.
Is that what you do?
Well, recognizing it, so acknowledging it by not necessarily saying, I'm giving my condolences or whatever, but, your dad died. Just repeating the same thing again with a bit of compassion, and then saying,
And usually, I find anyway, usually when you just do that and leave it at that, the other person will come up with something about that person or that situation or whatever. And that will give you the clue as to which way you can be most helpful to them. I mean,
I find repeating what they said with a bit of compassion, I think it's just the way I would do it.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, your dad died. Your mom died. Yeah.
I usually end up if it's a death, I usually end up in some form of recognizing it and then moving on to how, as quickly as possible, how things are so much better for them now. They're in a much better place. And you can't go there necessarily right away. You have to respond based on what the other person's feeding back to you. But I go there a lot.
I think what you did to Louise was a brilliant second step that I'd possibly use.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, your mom died. What are the things that you loved about her?
Right, exactly. Exactly.
And that's a nice transition phase, yeah.
Yeah, there are a number of ways to do that, but that's really what it amounts to, is just helping them. The best help, like you said, is not just to stay high, which is the point that you made, in the high vibration, but also to help them refocus on what they like.
Yeah, I mean, they argued that point with me quite a bit, which was interesting because I really enjoyed that, because I very rarely get people arguing with me. And eventually she said, you know what, maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I said to them, you don't have any power to help them when you're down there. And when they really got that, when they, when they put themselves in that feeling and they started to see their vibration sinking and they started to actually feel it for themselves, started to realize that they are shutting themselves off from their own power, which means they're shutting themselves off from the power of being able to influence others with their own vibration. Because if you've got a low vibration, you're only going to be able to give the other person a low vibration.
Mm-hmm.
Game over.
Yeah.
And, just breaking that down for them was really, really helpful. And the one girl, the quieter one, was saying, I really want to take this back and teach it in China.
Good for her.
And I love that. It was like, I just don't think I taught you enough yet, but maybe, even with what I've given you, with the simplicity of what it is, you can work it all out for yourself,
There are plenty of sources online she can get information from too, so there's that.
Yeah, we didn't quite go there yet. It didn't get to that stage, but, we're in communication, so, anything can happen.
Interesting thing right there. My mind just went through about 4 or 5 steps. Let me see if I can retrace them, because I think they created an interesting pattern. On the topic of focusing on what you don't like, which is, in this case, it's going to be an expression of what I don't like, not necessarily what she doesn't like, but what I don't like. She comes from a country that is heavily dominated by a very powerful government that wants to control a lot about them.
Which they do not perceive.
Which is great. That's a fabulous thing. But nevertheless, they'll try to do that. And go back home and want to be able to access information about this online and feel frustrated about that. Or she could take steps to make it possible for her to find stuff online through the non-official channels, or she could choose to follow up on the stuff without going online. Or, there are a lot of different wars that are involved here. But the point is, she wouldn't have to necessarily get caught up in that place of, the government is stopping me again from getting this really great information that I want. Instead, finding the ways that she can get the information that she wants. I'm creating a scenario that doesn't actually exist yet, but nevertheless, it kind of illustrates how every single moment, no matter how difficult the thing may seem, there's always a way for us to find the way. And the way we find the way is literally by doing that most simple of things, expressing what it is that we truly like. And that's really quite, I continue every single day to just be blown away by that. It's fabulous.
Once you get it, Walt, you start saying, well, I can always move forward, no matter what happens.
Right.
It really doesn't matter. If it goes right, you continue in the same direction. If it goes wrong, you turn around and go the other way, but you're always moving. And that movement, I've always loved Jackie Chan. I don't know if you know the actor.
Jackie Chan? Sure.
Yeah. So he says he doesn't sit and watch TV. He stands and he's always moving. I
can see that about him, actually, yeah.
You can, and you kind of get the idea that movement has been so profound for him.
Yes.
So profound, I'm big into martial arts. So, Bruce Lee, I watched another movie of his life story, and I was so emotionally affected to the deepest core. That guy had such a clear philosophy. Be like water.
Mm-hmm.
If you put water in a glass, it takes the shape of a glass.
Mm-hmm.
Be like water.
A very Abrahamic concept, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, he had a lot of LOA stuff in his martial art thinking. He had a complete, He said, I hate the forms and all the stuff that goes on with martial art. He said, get rid of it all.
Mm.
Yeah. The quickest way between point A and point B is a straight line. And when when you're defending and all the rest of it, it's circles. And when you're punching, you punch, you go straight. Mm-hmm. And you only tense at the last second. The rest is always step three, but that focus at the end when you punch through. There were so many things that I just love about his philosophy. I mean, he had it so nailed down. And, I was always wondering when I was a kid, why did I love him so much? Why? And I watched his movies at home in South Africa, in the mountains, alone, by myself, nobody else around, nobody else to influence me into martial arts, and I was totally fascinated. Kung Fu was my cup of tea. The only martial art in my little town in South Africa, in Barberton, was karate. Now, karate is this. Okay, and I stood there and I watched a class as a young boy, probably 11, 12-year-old, and I was so disgusted I turned around and ran away.
Did you really? Wow.
I was like, this is not what I want at all.
It certainly didn't match what Bruce Lee was doing on the screen.
Nope, not at all. If you start looking at Bruce Lee's forms and his training, it's so graceful. And the fascinating thing about Bruce Lee is he was very good before he had this fight with this Chinese guy to have the right to teach this kind of kung fu in America. And when he won and he turned his back to walk out, the guy ran up to him, kicked him in his back, and he was in traction for a long period of time, which is where he wrote his only book, Upside Down, where his wife lay underneath him and he transcribed to her. So afterwards, you look at his physical movement. He was never supposed to walk again, okay? But his movement, his forms, his martial arts was 1,000,000 times better than before. Fluidity, the grace, the power, it was just on another level. And if you've ever seen that Bruce Lee video, you can go online and have a look at it. He plays table tennis with nunchuckers.
Wow.
And you can just type Bruce Lee and nunchuckers, table tennis, Bruce Lee table tennis, and you'll find it on Facebook, YouTube. And it's just amazing because I've never seen any other YouTube video of any other individual in the entire world who's ever played table tennis with nunchuckers.
I can't imagine hardly how you even do it.
He was phenomenal. I mean, his 1-inch punch, he just 1 inch hit somebody and he'd throw them right across. He did it in front of the public on cameras. It's all there, all the evidence is there. They had to slow his movies down because he was just too fast. His punches, nobody could see any of them.
Yep.
And he trained all day, every day. And when he fought Chuck Norris, who was 10 times world champion karate guy,
right?
There's a few comments, but some people say Chuck Norris changed his style completely after doing that one movie with Bruce Lee. Where they're in the Coliseum fighting to the death. And Bruce Lee wins in the movie. But, when Chuck Norris was asked, he always said he had a lot of respect for Bruce Lee and all the rest of it. But he said, who do you, when he was asked by a reporter who would win between Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee, he was saying, well, you do know that Bruce Lee was an actor and I'm a proper karate champion, world champion.
Really?
Yeah. And he said, that's all I will say on the subject.
Oh. Chuck, I don't know how to tell you this.
I don't think you had a hope in hell, mate.
Oh, yeah.
I can see that actual YouTube video when Chuck says that.
Yeah. Well, actually, I can see Chuck saying that.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, yeah. This is one of those times where it'd be fun to create your own scenario, like bring Bruce Lee back from the dead and in his prime and set up in a coliseum without a script and say, okay, guys, go at it.
Go at it. Yeah. There was something profound about
and then hope there's somebody taking bets on the side so you can place your bet.
I can imagine that Coliseum full and people betting. Yeah.
There's a funny thing about betting that I ran into this week. As you probably can imagine, even though you don't follow the news, there's a lot of angst about our president. And it is kind of...
I can't believe that.
I know, it's hard to believe, isn't it? It's kind of revving up for 2020 when the next presidential election takes place.
He's using the law of attraction.
He is a master at it. There's no doubt about it. But nevertheless, there's all this angst from on both sides, actually. There's angst on his supporter side. Why aren't you supporting our president? And there's angst on his opponent's side. What are we going to do to get rid of this president? And so there's this whole dynamic going on like that. And I was looking at, I don't even remember why I was doing this, but I ended up looking at one of the bet-taking places online, because there are lots of websites that'll take bets on sports and, just about anything you can possibly imagine, including politics. You can bet on an election, depending on what countries you live in.
Oh, right. Mm.
And so I was just looking to see what the odds are. And the odds are overwhelmingly that President Trump is going to get reelected in 2020.
I can almost guarantee it.
He's the odds-on favorite. And I can almost guarantee that he's going to get destroyed.
Oh, you think he's going to get destroyed?
I really do, yeah. And I base that, now I'm a political scientist, that's my background. And I have been following political polls for decades now. Mm-hmm. And I've learned quite a bit about what you pay attention to, what you ignore, all that kind of thing. And there is a pattern that has been going on since about the 6-month mark of Trump's term. Mm-hmm. You kind of have to look back to kind of paint the larger picture. But the larger picture is, in the 2016 election, he ran against Hillary Clinton, who was President Bill Clinton's wife and at that point was Secretary of State. And she was the favorite going into the final months of the election, but by a relatively small amount. And there was a key aspect of this that was really, really unique. It was so unique that it's truly unique. Unique means it's never happened before, right? To the best of my knowledge, it had never happened before. We had two primary candidates, who had more people disliking them than liking them. In polling terms, it's called favorable, unfavorable. Mm-hmm. And Donald Trump's favorable, unfavorable was about 46 favorable, 54 unfavorable. Mm-hmm. And Hillary Clinton's was about 44 favorable and 56 unfavorable. Mm-hmm. So Clinton was slightly more unfavorable than Trump. But we had never had two candidates where at least one of the candidate wasn't more on the favorable side than on the unfavorable side. It was really, really unusual. And that's one of those markers you can look at. And if you have one candidate who's on the favorable side, in the majority on the favorable side, and another candidate who's in the majority on the unfavorable side, 9 times out of 10, that first candidate is going to win. Mm-hmm. Regardless of what their stances are on the issues, regardless of what's going on with the world, it doesn't matter, just because political contests are largely popularity contests. Mm-hmm. Who likes who? That's really what it comes down to. So it's a very, very powerful indicator. Well, that was the first time that we'd ever had it where there were two candidates who were both disliked more than they were liked, which was interesting because the polls showed that Clinton had a narrow lead coming into the last couple months before the election. Then there's the whole thing about Russian interference and other things that happened. And by the time election day came around, they were almost even with each other. Clinton was just slightly ahead. And then the election actually takes place. She wins the popular vote. She actually slightly gets more votes, but because of the way the Electoral College is structured, he wins the election. Mm-hmm. And that, of course, threw everybody for a loop, because, oh my God, she was supposed to win this thing outright. Well, if you follow that same tracking, because polls get done repeatedly over time. They don't just take one poll and they're done. They do the same poll over and over and over again, and you learn a lot more by watching what happens to those results over time. If you see the results bouncing all over the place, then you don't really trust any of them yet because they haven't settled into a pattern. Mm-hmm. But when they settle into a pattern over time, you say, now we got something going here. This is a real thing. And 99 times out of 100, that's the way they'll play it out. Well, when Trump got elected, his favorables and unfavorables flattened a little bit. So they became a little bit closer. They were like 48-52. And in what they call the red states, in other words, the states that strongly lead Republican, he was in the favorable range. And in the blue states where they lean Democrat, he was very much in the unfavorable range. Well, if you look at that tracking, from the point that he got elected to 6 months into his term, in all states, that favorability dropped. Mm-hmm. How much varied from state to state? It was anywhere from, I think, as low as 7 or 8% up to like 26%. Mm-hmm. That is a massive drop. So now the question is, how real is it? And you know how real it is if it stays over time. Mm-hmm. There's a really cool website that shows this beautifully. It's called morningconsult.com. People can go check it out. Mm-hmm. Look for the thing about Trump tracking and Trump favorability. And you will be able to go through state by state and see how this favorable, unfavorable tracking has worked out since the election, since the last election. And there's a drop-off in every single state's case after 6 months that has created a new pattern that has held since then. And that new pattern shows that Trump is even more disliked than he was when he was elected. He was more disliked than when he first ran. The dislike in his own states, his popularity has fallen by 10 to 15%. I mean, there's this massive shift that started 6 months after he got elected and stayed. So it's been going for over 2 years now. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, the Democrats could run Mickey Mouse and defeat Donald Trump because his unfavorables are so bad right now. And until that shifts, and I don't see anything shifting it, I don't see how he can get elected. Mm-hmm. So this is one of the few elections that I've ever run into where I said, I know who's going to win before we're even in the primary season. And then I'm hearing all these people saying, oh, no, Trump's the odds-on favorite. And I'm saying, are you looking at the same polling data I am? Because, I mean, that's not what the polling data is telling me.
But what about from the point of view of law of attraction, Walt, where, if you focus on what you don't want, you get it?
I see a pattern going on there, too. Mm-hmm. Right after Trump got elected and for the first, I'll say, 18 months of his presidency, there has been a whole lot of attention. There's always been a whole lot of attention by his supporters, who are about 35 to 40% of the population. And there's also been a tremendous amount of attention by his opponents. And his opponents have maintained that negative attention for a long time. But if things happened in the last, I'll say 6 to 9 months, mm-hmm. the attention has reduced. In other words, it's like people have gotten used to all his bombasticism. They've gotten used to all this stuff coming out of his mouth, and it's no longer having an effect on them. Mm-hmm. So they're just paying less attention. Now, there's plenty of activists who are paying a lot of attention to him. Mm-hmm. So don't get me wrong. There's still a lot of attention going on there, but it's reducing.
Mm-hmm. Well, he's playing what's it called? Crying wolf, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Or the Chicken Little.
Yeah.
The sky is falling. The sky is falling. Funny, the sky's still up there. I mean, you do that often enough, and people just stop believing you.
But I think there's a bigger thing that the people are saying. They're saying, I'm just fed up with politics, and
it's a huge thing. And I've been saying all along, there is a lot of good coming out of the Trump presidency, regardless of which side of the fence you're on. There is a lot of good coming out of it. Mm-hmm. Because people are either very clearly stating, this is what I like, or very, very clearly stating, this is what I don't like.
When does the transition take place? Well,
the next election is 2020, November 2020.
November 2020, okay.
Right.
Yeah. About a year away, yeah?
Yeah, a year and a quarter away, right. And it will start getting very interesting by this coming January, because that's when the primary season starts. Mm-hmm. The primaries will run through around May, early June. By that point, the Democrats will have named their main candidate. Trump will almost certainly be the Republican candidate, and that from that point on through November will be the actual election campaign.
They were saying on an online game, the Americans were saying the Lib Dems are just being ridiculous in America, and they want to stop you cutting down trees. And
oh yeah, well, there's actually separate news services. There are. I think you have the same thing in the UK, but there are conservative news services and there are liberal news services.
Some that are leaning towards different areas. Yeah.
Well, the lean has gone. We're not talking solidly one or solidly the other. There isn't a whole lot of lean left anymore here. And yeah, depending on who you listen to, you could actually have one story about one thing. I mean, you mentioned what you call trees being cut down. Yeah. You could have that one topic being addressed by the conservative network and by the liberal network, and it's like they're talking about two different stories. They don't even overlap on any of the facts. That's how extreme it's gotten. It's pretty crazy. But here's the interesting thing. From what I can see, now this is more subjective on my part. I don't have any data to support this. From what I can see, the major news sources are being ignored. Except by the most virulent supporters of one or the virulent supporters of the other, they are being ignored. One of the best examples of that was a survey I saw of Gen Z. Generation Z is the generation after millennials.
Okay.
And the Gen Z folks are getting tremendously less news from the major news sources. Mm-hmm. In fact, I was stunned to find out, I mentioned this the other day to Alex King, I was stunned to find out who their major news source. Their major news source is BuzzFeed, a website that I didn't even know anything about. I'd never visited it. I mean, I'd heard the name and that was about it. Mm-hmm. And it is a news website. It has its own spin to it. I'm not sure I could label it as either left or right, but it does have its own spin to it. But that's who like 39% of Gen Z folks get their news from.
You've got it wrong, Walt.
What's that?
It's Generation Z.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, well, I'm an American, so it's Generation Z where I come from.
It sounds better, Z.
It does? I don't know. That's just what I call it. I always liked the fact that the British called ZZ. I thought that was cool. I never used it, but I liked it. It just has a nice sound to it.
You make it out as though you came first and we came second.
Well, no, I know it's the other way around. But then again, I come from a country where Daniel Webster decided that if you want to be completely separate from the British, you have to actually change the English language, and so he did.
Yeah, Americans don't speak English.
No. Well, it's a classic line from, what's it from? Oh, from the old movie Mary Poppins. Mm-hmm. The father in Mary Poppins says about English in America, they haven't used it for years. And that pretty much summarizes it.
We love teasing you guys. Unspelled.
That's all right.
Or anything.
Hey, we give as well as we get. It's not a big deal.
Of course you do. And I'm not even English.
That's right. You're originally South African. What do they say about South African use of English? I'm curious.
Well, it's a bit complicated because obviously we were affected by England, who invaded us, and we were affected by America. Now, the reason why I was brought up mostly on American TV and not British TV is because we hated the British because they killed all the Boers' wife and children in concentration camps.
Right.
So we had a very anti-vibe in South Africa to the British, so most of the TV I was brought up on was Magnum and Dallas and, very American stuff. So it was strong. My mother was British, so there was a strong influence on both sides. So we're kind of stuck in the middle.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I can see that, we had the glitch there, so it kind of upset the time. I'm not sure exactly how close we are to an hour, but we're pretty close. So I think I'll just draw it to a close here. Yeah. I want to remind people, become a subscriber if you're not yet a subscriber. We've done how to do that in the past, but very briefly, just go to LOAtoday.net and walk through the steps. And we'd love to have you listen to all of our podcasts going forward. Louis, I'm sorry I won't be able to talk to you next Monday, but I look forward to talking to you 2 Mondays from now.
Yeah, have a great fortnight.
Thank you very much. You too. And thank you also to our live stream listeners as well. We will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye.
Carpe diem. Take care.